Okay, welcome back to the video. This is part 3 of my Voyager style grand tour of the outer planets. In the last video we brought the Aero Freighter from Earth all the way over here to Jupiter, and we passed Periapsis a little bit ago at Jupiter, so we're now on our way out. At least I think we passed Periapsis, yeah. So I left us here, with a good look at Jupiter. Figured this would be a good place to pick back up and continue the mission. So let's dive in. Let me bring up orbit MFD. I'm just curious where I'm at exactly. Yeah, we passed Periapsis there, so we're 4,000 seconds past it. So I'll bring up TransX, and we'll just kind of take a look here at the next stage. It might even help to bring up an external because that's not very big. Just take a quick look here on a really large version so we can see better. So the inner ring is, in this stage, the inner ring is Jupiter, and the outer ring here is Saturn. And this is where Jupiter is at right now. And that's where Saturn is at right now. And we're slinging past Jupiter at this point, and that's going to take us here, kind of inside the orbit of Jupiter, and back out again, and then we're going to sling over here, and we're going to rendezvous with Saturn over here at that point. Speaking of that rendezvous, I said something yesterday while I was recording that I think may not actually be true, so I want to make an addendum to that statement. When I was setting up TransX, I believe I stated that all the encounters would be a had to have a low inclination, like 0, a normal orbit. And I noticed after the fact, when I was watching the replay, that my encounter at Jupiter appears to be retrograde, which seems very odd to me. But nevertheless, you can see it right here. The inclination is 169. That's almost 180, which is almost a backwards orbit. Or at least we're encountering Jupiter on the other side. And I didn't really even think that was possible, but apparently it is. But I know when you go to the moon, when you do the Earth-Moon free return, it only works if you have the inclination in one direction. So I was just kind of under the impression that as you go out through the planet slings, you have to hit them on the outside. But anyway, that does not appear to be the case. So as you're setting up your slings, I guess don't worry so much about whether the inclination's 180 or 0. Rather just focus on making sure that this part is all lined up how it needs to be. So speaking of getting things lined up, we can see here in stage 3 that we're not quite lined up anymore. So let's do this. Go ahead and close that out, and we'll come forward on this stage over here, VW over to Sling Direct, and we'll just make a couple of quick changes to get our relative inclination all the way down. And our PE ratio, we want that to be about 1. And that looks pretty good right there. So now we've got our Saturn sling, kind of reconfigured. We're not actually doing any burns at that point, so it's not like setting this up actually has an effect on our trajectory. All we're doing is we're saying that this is the trajectory that we want. This is the intention of our orbit. And as we go out away from Jupiter, we may have to set up a maneuver from time to time to get everything lined up how it has to be. But for the time being, we are not going to do that. We're still here, in the slingshot around Jupiter, so we'll have to fast forward time until this stage ends. And once this stage ends, then we'll concern ourselves more with how our Saturn approach is looking. 5 years of O2, so we don't need to worry about using any more O2 at the moment. Let's see our Saturn. Let's find out the time on the Saturn encounter is going to be 110092. Let me just get an idea of when that is. 110092. So that's going to be the 4th month, the 19th day of 2160. So 4/19/2160. 5 years. That's going to take a while. So let's go ahead and start warping time forward. 5 years is that's quite a while. That's like 20 minutes of time warp, I believe. But let's pull away from Jupiter here at just 100x so we can just look at it because it's cool looking.
Translation. Rotation.
You can see Io over there. With a little more planning, you could probably set up your slings so that you would have a pretty decent encounter, not only with Jupiter, but maybe that you could sort of plan on passing not too far away from the moons as well. You wouldn't do it as a sling. You're just going to sling the planets themselves, but if you timed everything right, you could at least have the moon in your path. But, that requires probably quite a bit more planning. And I don't know that transects really could even include, sort of those waypoints or detours. Anyway, we'll go out to 1000x. It looks like Io's getting closer. It's pretty cool. Let's see what that looks like from the captain's chair.
Transrotation.
There it is. So if we come up here to the windows, we can look out and we've got Jupiter here and Io there. That's pretty neat. Okay, time warp. And you can see as we're pulling away from Jupiter, what's going on in transects. It's showing now that our trajectory out to Saturn is pretty bad and has us impacting the planet, but none of this matters. We're 5 years out, so it's completely irrelevant. This is going to change a lot. And I guess we'll go to 10,000, and we can say goodbye to Jupiter. And 100,000. So that was the Jupiter Sling. And now we're back in the vast emptiness of space. And it will be quite some time before we have any kind of sight of any object again. It'd be a bit like being a Voyager out in the ocean, I suppose, when you see land and then you go by it and you're not going to see land again for, who knows how long. But here in Transx you can see what's happening with our trajectory. It just continues to get farther and farther out. So as soon as we get outside of Jupiter's influence, we'll immediately set up a maneuver to start realigning our Saturn sling. We can probably get an idea of when that's going to be by bringing up orbit MFD. You can see the gravitational influence is currently 0.17. And when this gets all the way down to 0.2, that will be roughly when the stage will end. And I do think it's good practice to set up your stage, to set up your maneuver as soon as that stage ends, it doesn't have to be to the second, but you don't want to wait any longer than is necessary. Because the longer you wait, the more delta V it's going to require. So here we're down to 0.8. Still got a little way to go. But you can see here we're just getting farther and farther off. We're currently on a straight line past Saturn, so we're not even really in a sling trajectory anymore. So we're definitely gonna need a little bit of correction there, and it won't take much. These types of corrections, just to get this line moved back down here, it's going to be a very small amount of correction because we're so far out, and there we are. So immediately we come back to 1x, real time, because our stages have updated. Now we'll press VW on this side to get the view slingshot, and then on this side, even though it says view maneuver, I don't trust it, so I'm going to go around until it says view maneuver again. Now we'll turn maneuver mode on, and the first thing we'll do is bump the date forward. Right now it's 9746, so we want maybe 5 minutes to set this up. So we'll set this to 9795 or somewhere close to that. That's good enough right there. And you can see if we look at if we look at the target view, we can see how much time we have, but I'm not actually seeing that at the moment. I guess that's probably because I haven't put in any actual delta V yet, so it's not going to show me the target view. So let's get that figured out. We'll start as usual with prograde and just see what happens. Do I get a target view now? Yeah, now I've got the target view. So I guess you don't get the target view until you input some amount of delta V, but here you can see by bumping the date forward, it tells me I've got 5 minutes and 46 seconds to set this up, and that should be plenty of time. But if you want more time than that, then you can just come to the date and add in more time like that, and you can see now we've got more time. And if you don't need that much time to set up your maneuver, then of course you can take some away. And here that just gives us less than, about 4 minutes. So back to the maneuver view, and let's go through these variables again and see what we need to do here. Okay, PE ratio is coming down. Let me reset this and start with and use a different variable for a moment. Let's use a little bit of plane change here. It's actually going the wrong way. Let's reset that one as well. Let's see what outward does. Okay, I think once again we're getting the best results with prograde. Okay, PE ratio is going up, so let's it's actually using a lot more delta V than I expected it would. But sometimes also when you add in your plane change, like right now we've got 376 worth of delta V, sometimes the plane change will actually cancel out some of your prograde. Let's see if that's the case here. Getting pretty close. So currently we're looking at a delta V cost of 366, and I'm not actually concerned about fuel because the aero freighter has plenty, but even still I like to try to get the cheapest maneuver I can. But in the interest of time, I'm not going to worry about it too much, just because it'll take so long to get over to Saturn. And this video will be really long if I sit here and spend tons of time trying to refine this. Okay. Okay, that's a pretty low relative inclination. Now let's just make sure that we get the PE ratio as close to 1 as we can. That's pretty good right there. And maybe we'll go with that. Yeah, that looks good. So now you can see our sling around Saturn is how it needs to be, but we do need to burn this maneuver. And that was 27 seconds ago, so we spent a little longer setting it up. Let's go ahead and go to View Maneuver and bump the date forward just a little bit more. So 9785. And that still looks good. So VW over to target.
Translation rotation.
And I'm putting in just a little bit of translation and then using 10x to get the vessel to rotate faster. And once we're all lined up, I'll work with the date again, because we're past the burn now by 3 minutes. It's just a big vessel. It takes a while to move. Okay, we've got our X lined up almost. And I'm sure it would be fine to do the burn now, but just to show that we can do it on time, we can come over to maneuver, reset, and now we'll just go forward a few seconds, and we'll make sure that none of this changed it drastically in the meantime, and it didn't. We can do an update. Everything looks good. So now we'll do our burn in 30 seconds.
Translate rotation.
Okay, burning in 3, 2, 1. And burning. I think I started that about half a second early. Backing off the main engines.
Translation.
And now that we've got the main burn done, we should be pretty good. We'll have a couple more mid-course corrections to make, but they should just be, you know, relatively small burns. I wouldn't venture to guess how much, but we shouldn't need another large burn like that. And I would say, you know, if TransX had a little bit better modeling for the gravitational bodies, then we should have been able to sling Jupiter and head out to Saturn without even having to make any kind of burn that large. You know, maybe if you used IMFD, you'd be able to sling the planets without having that much of delta V to correct after the fact. So turn maneuver mode off and immediately go back to 100,000. And as we watch here, we'll see this will still fluctuate, but again, hopefully it won't be by much. And whatever it does fluctuate by, hopefully it'll go back and forth, like I see that a lot when I'm going to Mars. I don't get in too big of a hurry to do lots of corrections because I'll notice the amount of imprecision will drift one way, and then after a while it'll go back and drift the other way. So if you just wait, then it will sometimes correct on its own. But as long as it holds, you know, relatively close in here, then our next mid-course correction is just going to be a few meters per second. And again, we're not going to encounter Saturn until, what was it, 2160, I believe. Yeah. 110. $110,146, it looks like. Yeah, 2160. So quite a ways. And this doesn't look pretty, but if we look at this view and consider we're really not off by all that much. You know, this isn't a large correction to make. And we'll warp time ahead for a while and then do another correction. if I keep slowing things down and making corrections every time things drift a little bit, then instead of taking 20 minutes to get to Saturn, it'll take hours. I was actually just reading on Orbiter Forum right before I started this video today about basically faster time warps than 100,000, specifically for the purpose, of going out to, I think it was Neptune that was mentioned on Orbiter Forum. And there are ways to get faster time acceleration, but the one plugin that I was reading about apparently is really buggy and causes crashes, and obviously I don't want to deal with that. And I also know that you can use the scenario editor to move your vessel, forward in time, and it'll maintain some of the precision, but I don't think it's as accurate as doing time warp, and it also doesn't use your oxygen. So let's say we moved our vessel forward by 1 year, we should have 2 years and 10 months of O2 remaining if we did that. But if you use the scenario editor to just move your date forward, it doesn't consume any of your logs. So not much to look at. If we look outside, we can bring up the celestial view and, spin around. You can see we're on our way to Saturn right there. There's Jupiter back there. Not much to look at. You can see our PE ratio is kind of bouncing back and forth there a little bit. I think when we get to June, I'll do another mid-course correction because that'll be 3 years away. And if we look here in this view, we can see, where we are and where the planets are at. It's not real high. It's not real easy to see because this virtual cockpit kind of makes the text and the graphics look a little odd. It's not as crisp as if you get this view, but this virtual cockpit is really cool. And I actually don't even really like virtual cockpits that much, but the Aero Freighter just has a good one. Okay, we're at June, so let's go back to 1x for a bit, and we'll go through this quickly, just for the sake of time. So, VW over to maneuver, and let me just do what I need to do without explaining everything. So it looks like immediately we're getting the most benefit out of plane change, so we'll start with that one. Yeah, that's bringing our P ratio way down at only 13 delta V. Now we should be able to get the relative inclination with just a little bit of either prograde or outward. I'm thinking outward might be the one. Yeah, it looks like we're getting the relative inclination with outward. Okay, so we'll go back and forth between plane change and outward. I'm gonna go with that.
Rotation.
Okay, I've got the aero freighter rotated so that that X is in one of the 4 positions here. Now I need to rotate up or down. And again, we'll go 10x to speed up the rotation. And we'll come over to maneuver, and we'll quickly just do an update to make sure nothing changed in the meantime. And we'll bump the date, and we'll reset it, and then bump it forward so we get a countdown. There we go.
Translation. Rotation. Translation.
And this is only a cost of 18 delta V, so that's pretty good. That's nice and low. Hopefully all subsequent burns between here and Saturn are now low, and we'll probably have another fairly large burn after we sling Saturn on the way over to Uranus, you know, because the gravitational permutations will be such that TransX won't model it correctly, and we'll have some, you know, 200, 300, 400 delta V burn that we need. That's my guess.
Rotation.
Oops.
Translation.
That's good enough. 0.00. Maneuver mode off, and immediately back to 100,000, and we can just start watching how our sling's coming along. And now we're saying our encounter is going to be 110165. Let's find out when that is. 110165. Going to be July, so July 1st, 2160. So maybe around maybe July 2159 we'll do another mid-course, either 2159 or 2158, depending on how much this changes between now and the next year. Speaking of years, check my oxygen supply. Yeah, I'm still at 3 years, so we won't concern ourselves with oxygen just yet. Yeah, I think we'll do the next mid-course July 2158 because we're still getting quite a bit of drift here. And once we get over to our Saturn encounter, we'll kind of take a look, check things out, and then I'll wrap it up for this part of the video. We'll make each planet its own part. That'll make for nice logical sections. Bring up transx and the external MFD so we can sort of see the progression here. Jupiter on the inside, Saturn on the outside. And also, once we get a little in, we'll get in a little closer, we'll start taking a look at our Uranus sling. Because right now we're completely missing it, because things have changed so much. So we'll have to refine that quite a bit. So we're at March 2158. May 2158. So again, we'll go to July and then do another mid-course correction. Couple more weeks. Go ahead and close that out for now. Okay, we're basically here at July. So back to 1x. And we'll bring up transx on this side. Now before I start setting up the Saturn, I'm going to go ahead and go forward to stage 4 here, stage 3 on this side, and start making some changes so that we can plan for that Uranus sling coming up, because things have shifted so much that we're now missing Uranus entirely. So sling direct, and it looks like we need to take away some, or maybe add in some outward. No, take it away. Bringing the P ratio down. Okay, about right there. Now some outward to further refine that. And back over to inclination. Okay, that has the relative inclination pretty low. And I'm going to bring up the PE ratio to 1. Oops. Hate when I do that. You try to go to that next level of precision and hit reset instead of getting what you actually need. Okay. Okay, hyper, now we're down to the lowest precision, so we can't go anymore. And that'll be fine. We're not coming up to Uranus at the moment, so that's all the level. That's all the amount of refinement that we're going to need for this, for the moment. Okay, now back to stage 2 on that side and stage 1 on this side, so we can set up the maneuver. But what the reason I wanted to refine the Uranus stuff is because that will have some impact on where my relative inclination and PE ratio needs to be for the Saturn sling. So you're just kind of thinking ahead one planet. If you were really, if you had good MFDs that were really good, you should, in theory, be able to plan, you know, all the way ahead for each planet in the sequence, but I just don't feel like TransX has enough precision to do that. So anyway, back to stage 2 over here. Let's get this maneuver going. Maneuver mode on. And date 8952, so let's go. Hopefully that's enough. And let's start with the plane change again. And that's not doing anything, so we'll reset that one. and go to outward. And that's helping the relative inclination, but it's not doing much for the PE ratio. So we'll just reset that for now. And let's see what prograde does for us. That's what we want. So that's bringing the PE ratio down. So that gives us a good starting point. And now we'll see if plane change helps. Yeah. Okay, so this time it's going to be plane change and prograde. And that looks good right there, so we'll go with that. VW over to view target.
Rotation.
And let's get rotated. Okay. And there we're lined up. And we have another relatively small burn of 26 meters per second. Let's go ahead and warp time ahead 2 minutes to get to the time to do the burn. 1 minute. Okay, now 5 seconds. Burning in 2, 1, and burning. Just a couple clicks of main engine.
Translation.
And we're done. Okay, immediately back to 100,000 so we can finish the journey. Have 2 years to go. Let's put that in 110166. Yeah, we're still, this hasn't changed, so we're still 2 years out. And our Uranus sling obviously isn't holding together very well, but at least we're still in the ballpark. And our Neptune encounter is surprisingly still actually showing up. If you have this information showing up in view encounter, then you're not too terribly far off, you know, in the cosmic scale. When this information disappears, then you're so far away from the planet that Transx isn't even showing anything. So the fact that we can actually see our Neptune encounter means that we're not that far off. So basically, the looks of things is that you've got your large burn to go from wherever you're at, in this case was Earth, out to your first planet. And then along the way, you're going to have a couple of mid-course corrections that shouldn't cost you more than, a few meters per second. Once you sling your first planet, then you're going to have a large, relatively speaking, a large burn of something, a large burn to get yourself realigned to the next planet. In this video, it was like 366 meters per second. Then as you're en route from one planet to the next, you might have 2 or 3 small burns, 20 meters a second, somewhere in that range. Then when you get to the next planet, I'm betting that once I pass Saturn and I'm heading out to Uranus, then it's going to be the same thing as after I left Jupiter. In order to get over to Uranus, I'm going to have to do some fairly large course correction in the neighborhood of 300 meters per second, maybe even more. And I'm thinking that if you combined IMFD with your Transx plan, that you would be able to get a greater level of precision, and you wouldn't need so much in the way of in the way of the mid-course corrections. At least they wouldn't be as expensive. So we are about 18 months away. And this is holding together pretty well. So maybe when we get out to March, April, May, something like that, of 2160, then we'll think about our next mid-course correction. Unless this suddenly shifts in the meantime. Counter date is 110167. Still pretty close. So that's going to be July 3rd, 2160. And we can still see our encounter view at Neptune. And we're about 1 year out, so roughly 5 minutes of time warp. But we're going to have to stop here at, around May and do another mid-course correction. And again, we'll bring up Transx and an external MFD so we can look at the large view here so we can see our progress. Let me check my oxygen. It's been a while since I've thought about it. Yeah, we're down to 11 months. So yeah, so when we get over to May, that's the first thing I'll do is add in some oxygen. And I need to keep the view focused on here, that way I don't forget about it. If you were a space explorer, you would certainly have a lot of time on your hands, a lot of idle time on your hands to find things to do. I can't imagine going to any of the other planets without having some futuristic vessel like the Aero Freighter. I mean, you would just go insane, I would think, being cooped up in a little vessel, you know, something the size of the space shuttle, or, you know, could you imagine just going to Mars? You know, 18-month trip, cooped up in such a confined space. And I would think that the lack of gravity would get old in a hurry. I mean, it would be fun for, you know, until the novelty wore off after a day or two, but then it would just be, you know, like, somebody give me my gravity back, please. Okay, we're getting pretty close to May. And that'll put us about 2 months away from Saturn, so I think that'll be a good time to do the mid-course, the last mid-course, hopefully the last mid-course. Okay, let's back down, and let's get some oxygen. So, alright, let's take a look here. We're at 6.9%, 4 months. Okay, so I guess when you click use O2, it automatically maximizes, or it automatically consumes as many as it needs. So you don't have to just add one at a time. Now, does it eject those automatically? I mean, what happens to the used ones? Because like with the XR2 and XR5, once a module is used, you need to deploy it. But it looks like these are just disappearing. That's kind of weird. Okay, whatever. Okay, again, we'll go forward to stage 3 on this side and stage 2 on this side. And before we set up our maneuver, we'll actually refine our approach for Uranus here, because you can see everything's, you know, all out to lunch again. So an adjustment on the outward angle to bring the PE ratio down. And now an adjustment on the inclination angle to bring down the relative inclination. And back to outward angle. And that's pretty good. So now back to stage 2 on this side, stage 1 on this side. Actually, I guess we want stage 1 on both sides, but on this side I want to view Slingshot. Okay, maneuver mode on, date, go to 83, at least 8350, maybe even a little bit more than that. That should be good. Okay, now through the variables. Okay, that's not doing anything, so let's reset that. Wait a minute, now this is confusing. As I'm adjusting these variables, I'm not getting any update here. I guess maybe that's because I'm too close in now. Yeah, no matter what I adjust, it's not updating this information. Okay. So let me do this then. Let me turn off maneuver mode. And go to prograde. And while in the prograde position,
rotation, translation,
I'll see if I can translate what I needed to get. Yeah, let's do it that way. So I'm putting in a little bit of up translation to get the relative inclination, and looks like a little bit of yawing in reverse translations helping bring down the PE ratio. Actually, no, it's going to be forward translation to bring the PE ratio down. Forward translation and a little bit of lateral. So this wouldn't have accounted for more than a couple of meters per second, because this is all done with translation. Not sure why I couldn't turn maneuver mode on. That's odd. I'll have to ask Dimitri if he knows. Because the guy knows everything about Orbiter, I'm telling you. There's just nothing that he doesn't know about this program. Continuing to try to bring the PE ratio down. I amuse myself sometimes. Okay, looks like we almost got the PE ratio down to 1. And I'm having to make various corrections for the relative inclination as well. This probably isn't as fuel efficient as doing a maneuver because I'm not able to, project or predict what movements I need in advance, so I'm probably wasting a little bit of delta V here, but this is all translation, so it's still a very, very small amount of dV. And we're almost there. So we've got the PE ratio at 1.0876543. And there it is. And a little bit with the relative inclination. Okay, that looks good. Now let's view take another look at our, wow, what is that? That's not right. So let's set that up again. Okay, that's good enough for that. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that we didn't have some crazy trajectory that was going to try to send us through Uranus, because obviously that wouldn't work. And we're in good shape, I think. So let's, that should be Saturn over there. Yeah. Let's bring up, actually let's leave that there. Let's bring up orbit on this side and see how we're coming along with Saturn. Everything looks good. Alright. So we've still got 2 months to go. Let's warp time forward to finish the journey over to Saturn. And we're about a month out. Let me check everything up. Check everything again. looks pretty good.
Rotation. Translation.
It's just a little refinement. Okay, that looks good. Warping time ahead. And we're now less than 30 days out. And every time I do these slings, I'm always wondering what the odds are of accidentally slamming into one of the moons. At any rate, let's go prograde to Saturn. So we can see it out the front. Okay. Turn prograde off.
Rotation.
Kill rotation. And we'll just warp time in now at about 10,000 so we can Speaking of accidentally hitting a moon, let me Control S to save. Although I just don't suppose it would do any good. If I'm accidentally on a collision course with one of the moons, there wouldn't be any way to save this mission. So here we are at Saturn at last. Beautiful. Get in a little closer. There we go. I at least wanted to get in close enough so that the graphics smoothed out.
Translate rotation.
Let's rotate around and so we get a nice front facing view. Let's go forward and look out the window. That is cool, isn't it? And we'll warp time forward at, let's go to 1,000. Very, very neat. Here's our external view for a moment. Back off to 100. Welcome to Saturn. Almost looks like a water rippling there or something. Take a look at some stuff. Oxygen's okay. And our sling looks good. We are 21,000 seconds away from periapsis. What is our periapsis going to be? 35,000 kilometers. So we're going to get in pretty close. Is that cool or what? I mean, it's just so awesome. Go out to 1,000. Let me
Translate rotation.
rotate the vessel. That is just stunning. I'm really glad I brought the Aero Freighter. When I did this mission with the XR5, it just didn't have nearly the impression on me. I mean, it was still cool, but this view, this concept of standing on this bridge and looking outside and seeing this as your view, I mean, wow. It's almost like Star Trek or something. This would be like 10 forward or something. Just how cool would this be? I wonder if we're going to go like through the rings. That'd probably be a bad idea. Because the rings are like, you know, billions of tiny particles, just rock and dust. Yeah, I imagine it would just absolutely destroy a vessel to go anywhere near it. I believe they're 500 feet thick, or maybe it's 500 meters. Yeah, it looks like we're going to go right through the rings. I'm sure that won't pose any problems in orbiter, but that's something to keep in mind in future missions, is that we would want a periapsis that wouldn't have us going through the rings.
Translation rotation.
That's neat. Slow down to 10x. This was purely by mistake. I definitely didn't plan for this. But what a pleasant treat. Right in the... Fortunately, we're not quite in the shadow, but we can see the shadow. That's cool. Oops. Didn't mean to do that. Let's see where we're at. We're 1,000 seconds away from periapsis. Go to 10x. And real time. I just want to see what it's going to look like when we pass through. Probably won't look like anything. It'll probably just be colored like this, and then the next second it'll go black. I can see stars. Yeah, that's what I figured it would do. Yep.
Transrotation.
I'm gonna warp time ahead a little bit, get some distance now. And then we'll turn back and look at Saturn. Okay. And there we have it. Okay, so that is our Saturn encounter. Hope you enjoyed that. I sure did. Let me zoom in on our vessel. Go back to the captain's chair, take a look at things, and then we'll wrap up this video. It's been a long one. It's probably been over an hour. So yeah, we're past periapsis by 11,000 seconds. And we've got plenty of oxygen. And let's just quickly take a look here in Transx what our next encounter is going to be, or when it's going to be. It's going to be 113233, so let's punch that number in. 113233. So that's going to be 2168. So we've got 8 years between this encounter and the next one. And before I wrap it up, or as I'm wrapping it up, just reminding myself that I need to leave Transx open on at least one MFD, because as I mentioned in the last video, if you have your Transx plans all set up and you forget about your MFDs and have, say, orbit on one and then maybe map MFD on the other one, when you save your scenario, you'll lose all your Transx data. And it's not the end of the world. You can go back in and set it back up, but it's a pain. So I have Transx open on both, so I'm going to press Control S now to save. Friday, June 27th, 2160. And this is where we will pick back up in the next part. We'll leave Saturn and go over to Uranus, and that'll be the next video. If you enjoyed this video, and I sure hope you did, leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. Beautiful, beautiful view here at Saturn. I was really taken into the experience here myself. If you have any questions, as always, leave your questions down below. And I will see you in the next part.